Our next segment is an interesting one. Make sure that you're here for it. If you're not, head to Hall A. Over the past few years, Bitcoin had gone from being a little-known cryptocurrency used by the geeks and the internet users, pretty much the underworld users of the internet all over the world, to an established currency that is disrupting the payment landscape and making global headlines. Although the central banks across the Middle East and North African region have had an issue warning against the institutional use of cryptocurrency, a quick look at coinsmap.org shows over a dozen places across the Middle East and North African region that are already accepting Bitcoin as a method of payment. The following session will explore the potential and impact of Bitcoin on digital businesses across the sector, and the experience of regional professionals working to incorporate cryptocurrency into the market. Please help me welcome the moderator for today's panel discussion, Lara Shaya, the managing editor of ArabNet, along with the colleagues. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Not a day passes without hearing news about Bitcoin. Apple just released an updated policy allowing its apps to accept Bitcoin payments. And yesterday, our speakers concurred that Bitcoin is the best chance to disrupt the overall transactional scenes we have seen for the past 30 to 40 years. The real genius of Bitcoin lies in its blockchain, and this is what we are here to discuss. So, without further ado, please welcome our panelists, in no particular order: David Al-Ashqar, founder of Yellow; Tariq Kaddoumi, co-founder of Ambro Labs; and Amber Hawk, founder of the Pizza Guys. So all our microphones are working. So if anyone from the audience has a question during the session, please raise your hand. Don't wait for the end of the talk. We're accepting questions throughout. Before we start, I would like each one of you to briefly talk about their business. We will start with you, Amber.
Good morning. My name is Amber Hawk. I am the co-founder of the Pizza Guys, which is a restaurant here in Dubai in Business Bay. On the 2nd of February, we became, I believe, the first in the region to accept Bitcoin as payment for our goods.
Hi, I'm David Al-Ashqar, founder of Yellow. We're a Bitcoin startup in the region that is working on helping merchants accept and businesses accept Bitcoin as a form of payment without subjecting themselves to the volatility risk and so on. So they enable their merchants, their customers to pay them with Bitcoin, and they receive local currency dirhams to pay their suppliers, for example. And on the side, we're also doing a lot of educational and advocacy work and developing resources to spread Bitcoin in the region. For example, shoebitcoin.com.
Tariq.
Cool. And Tariq Kaddoumi, co-founder of Ambro Labs, and our company is basically, we provide services and software and consultancy to anybody who would like to accept Bitcoin, so a payment platform that we can give to merchants. And we also launched the Middle East's first Bitcoin ATM, which I think a lot of people have seen in the media as well. And we have some mobile phone payment top-up services as well called pico.com. And we also run the Bitcoin Mina on Twitter, which is more an educational and news and updates about the Middle East and Bitcoin and cryptocurrency in general in the Middle East.
So we'll move over the first question to David. David, what is Bitcoin?
So actually, before I jump into that, can I ask everyone to stand up, including speakers? So this is something that I like to do just to get a sense of what's going on. So for anyone that has never heard about Bitcoin, you can sit down now. Good. So people that have heard about Bitcoin but don't really understand it, sit down right now. So that's roughly 50% of the room that doesn't completely understand it. Now, you guys understand Bitcoin. Who has never used it or owned Bitcoins? Sit down. And so we're left with maybe 10 people.
Including the cameraman.
Okay, great. So what is Bitcoin? I like to bring up stories from both Richard Brown and Mike Hearn. When you think of money, it behaves differently whether you're using it in person to whether you're using it at distance. So if you're next to someone and you want to give them money, you can just hand over the cash. It's easy. You don't need anyone's permission or help. However, if you move at a distance, this doesn't work anymore. You always need the help of someone, of a middleman, a billman, a bank, a remittance company like Western Union, and so on. And so they get to add costs, they get to watch, in some cases they don't even exist. Well, Bitcoin came along and changed that completely. Now you could send money anywhere in the world without the need for a middleman. So it's completely peer-to-peer. It's a decentralized technology. And so that led to a lot of advantages, like it being instantaneous, virtually free, global, accessible anywhere in the world with a phone or internet connection, and so on. But Bitcoin is really about the platform much more so than just payments. And so what I mean by that is the innovation of Bitcoin is a platform for transfer of value. And a way to understand that is to compare it to the internet. The internet is a platform for the transfer of information. And so it democratized information. And it allows anyone to share with anyone and innovate with anyone with information. And so Bitcoin does the same thing, but with value. And money just happens to be one type of value.
Do you want to give us applications?
Right. So
theoretical.
Yeah. So there's two neat futuristic examples that I like to talk about, and I personally think that they're realistic and they're gonna happen. The first one is, think of your fridge that has its own Bitcoin wallet. Now you can actually have a thing, not just a person, have a money account. And so that fridge could be connected to the internet, detect when you run out of certain foods, place an order automatically, and have the food delivered to your door without you intervening at any point. And so something like that is very cool. Or another example is that of, you can think of driverless cars. You know, Google right now are developing driverless cars. Well, you can also imagine that you're on a highway, lots of driverless cars, you're in your car, and there's a lot of traffic, but you're in a hurry. So you could imagine telling your car that you're willing to pay a bit more, and so your car would connect to neighboring cars, pay small amounts of money in Bitcoin, or thanks to Bitcoin, and basically get the right of way, and you could speed along and get to your place faster.
Yeah, we hope to hear that soon.
Yes.
And how do we get Bitcoins? If you want, anyone? Tariq, do you want to answer?
Well, there are different ways to get Bitcoin. One of the main ways is to provide a product or service and you accept payment in Bitcoin. That would be the easiest way to do it. Another way would be to just buy Bitcoins from someone else. So that would be either an exchange or a person who is willing to sell you Bitcoins. So, for example, if I have Bitcoins now, just like if I have anything else I want to sell, I can sell another person Bitcoin and they will pay me back in cash. Or we can also go to an exchange. Like if you want to go to Europe, you would go to, for example, one of the exchange houses. You give them the local currency and they give you back, let's say, euros. You can do the same thing with an online exchange where you give them a currency and they'll give you back your payment in Bitcoins. So, and then you can use that after you have them in your wallet.
And of course, there's the ATM.
Yeah, of course. An ATM buying, it's a form of exchange. Exactly,
so here we have the ATMs. Where are your ATMs located?
Well, at the moment, it's just in one of our offices. It's an office in Media City here in Dubai. We have one ATM that we launched, and we had a video about it on YouTube, just to show how the use of it works, and just kind of a video showing, you know, you go to it, you put in your phone number, and it sends the Bitcoins to your wallet once you link it to your phone. We have also about 400 ATMs that we wanted to launch, but we're still waiting for a regulation license to actually get those out in the market. So that's why maybe nobody's seen them yet. So.
Okay, we will get into that
Yeah.
soon. Amber, what made you decide to make Bitcoin acceptable at the Pizza Guys?
Good question. So I'm here to give you the practical perspective of how it works as a merchant. I do accept, the Pizza Guys does accept Bitcoin for everything on our menu. And this was a conversation that we had started actually with Tariq. He is a loyal customer at the Pizza Guys. And this was a few months ago, and he said, guys, have you heard about Bitcoin? And I said, yeah, kind of. You know, there's a lot of bad press. Bitcoin, I don't know if you're familiar with it, you know, Silk Road, money laundering, drug pushing. But, you know, you have to get beyond those headlines. And Tariq was kind enough to spend some time with us to explain how it works, the advantages. So we went back, my husband and I, we jointly own the Pizza Guys, and we did a lot of research. We also read the 8-page, 7-page paper that the creator of Bitcoin has published. If you can get beyond the formulas and you can get beyond the technicalities, the main focus is removing the intermediary and having a peer-to-peer direct, me and you, transact for any amount at any time. And from a merchant's perspective, there are some very clear cost advantages. Those of you who own a business here in Dubai or have anything that accepts a credit card, we have to pay. As you know, you have to pay a transaction fee. The merchant has to pay. Oftentimes, we have to wait for the money to hit our account. It's not available immediately, money that I cannot do anything with. So these kinds of things, especially for, you know, I'm an entrepreneur, I have a small business. You know, money is always, you know, having the access to money that you can do something with is very important, and of course saving. A lot of our business does come through credit cards. It's a facility, of course, that every business have, and we also, for our deliveries, we send the credit card machine also. So we have actually a lot of payments in credit card. So we did go do the research. I was fairly convinced, and I decided that this was, it was time to accept Bitcoin. I know that we are the first in the region, and then we heard some noise, I think, in Jordan. As soon as we announced it, somebody in Jordan, a cafe, a cute little cafe.
Turtle Green.
Turtle Green,
Yeah.
yes, Turtle Green also accepted Bitcoin. We were ecstatic. And that's how it came about. It was in interest. It was also to lend support, because we do believe this is the blockchain technology, the ability to verify every single payment on the blockchain is something that I hope we'll be discussing more of in a minute. And of course, having another form of payment. It is a viable form of payment. It is a currency that you can exchange, and we have just basically opened it up. And from the merchant's perspective, there are some very clear cut, especially if you're a small business owner.
I would like to know if there are customers who are coming, and how many?
Two of them are right here. Few in the audience. Yes, we've had over 40 transactions so far since we started on the 2nd of February. It doesn't sound like a big amount, but in the world of Bitcoin transactions since the short period of time, it is actually quite high. I have met so many interesting people who have come to the Pizza Guys. Ambro, what is it? Ambro, I know everything. Ambro, I'm an expert. Ambro, I'm a trader. Ambro, I'm a XYZ, I'm the, you know, behind Bitcoin Mina, we have all kinds of people walking in, and to be honest, I'm very impressed with the level of knowledge that the people who do come to the Pizza Guys, because we are the first to, accept Bitcoin, so they want to spend it, and I'm very impressed with the level of knowledge they have about how it works. Very, very impressed. This is not, most of these people are definitely not first-time users or buyers.
Interesting. Bitcoin's algorithm goes against the existing monetary policies. For example, it has the tendency to be deflationary and has a limited supply, as opposed to the traditional currencies, governmental currencies, where they are inflationary and theoretically have an infinite supply. So why do you think it is, why follow such a radical policy? Why not make Bitcoin a normal digital currency?
So, I'm no economist to comment from an economic perspective on why one way would work and another way wouldn't work. But I think fundamentally Bitcoin it's an experiment. It's an experiment in monetary policy, among other things, but it's also a greater technological experiment. It's really about putting novel ideas out there and then letting the market decide, letting the market test them out and see if they work. We don't really know if a deflationary system is going to work or not, or finite supply and all of that. But the best way to find out is just put it out there. And so far, it's been 5 years since the creation of Bitcoin, and so far it has done impressively well. And so this is a testament to the value of experimentation. And to further expand on that, Bitcoin takes it to another level because it's a completely open and inclusive technology. Anyone can use it, or anyone can decide not to use it if they didn't want to, or if they didn't agree with its principles. But you could also, anyone here could decide to take the code, the algorithm behind Bitcoin, make a few changes that you think would improve it or would make it different in a way, and then release that to the world. And people have done that. These are the alternative coins, the altcoins. And so that creates a truly competitive system where you have multiple digital currencies competing together for the best spot. And so it's not anymore a monopolistic system. And that to me is a revolutionary idea, that you could have different technologies and currencies competing together on the market to get to a point where the best one, the most suitable one wins.
Tariq, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, it's very important to note that Bitcoin is not actually fully deflationary yet. Bitcoin starts as an inflationary currency or commodity or whatever you want to call it. So with the way inflation works is that through quantitative easing, the central banks would release X amount of cash into the economy based on the amount of resources and based on the growth of the economy. And it kind of assumes infinite growth, which means unlimited supplies and resources, which is in practice is not actually true. So the way Bitcoin has tackled this is it starts as an inflationary currency or commodity, and there is the creation of Bitcoin through mining happens from the beginning until the year 2140. And this creation has been set in a similar way to the way of gold mining, so that the half-life of the production rate is halved by every 4 years. So at the moment, it's still an inflationary currency, but the way it works is it keeps inflating until it stabilizes itself and stabilizes the economy, rather than going the other way around, which is an infinite or unlimited inflation.
So just for the audience to know, there are 21 million Bitcoins that can be present,
yes.
And now we've reached 13?
Yes, about 12 or 13, yeah.
12, 13,
yeah.
Okay. Do we have any questions from the audience? Yes.
The microphones.
Yeah, one of the challenges that one keeps hearing about Bitcoin is the volatility, the price, and what happened a few months ago, the massive drop, and then stabilizing at a price level which is almost half of what it was before that. So, and that's primarily, this happens in the early stage of probably something that can be explained. But even then, the speed and the frequency and the extent of drop was far too high. That creates a lot of discomfort with the currency. So, what's your comment on that?
That's a very fair point, but I'll just compare that to the adoption of new technology. You look at the adoption curve of any new technology, and it's very rocky. At the start, you have just few people coming in and out, and major news actually affects the adoption, and it drops off and it goes back up. So I think we are in the tumultuous start of Bitcoin, and so we're going to go through these highs and lows. But the trend has been undeniably upward. Which is what's important. Now, if your question was around businesses accepting Bitcoin, for example, and exposing their business to the risk, I agree. It is a risk that not a lot of businesses can take, especially if, for example, they have to cover their costs, and their costs are fixed, but Bitcoin prices go up and down. And this is where services like the one we're offering at Yellow completely shields you from that. And so you could charge your customer in Bitcoin and get all of the advantages of Bitcoin in terms of pay transaction fees and international acceptance, but on your end you would receive dirhams or whatever local currency you want. And so that solution, among others, is actually very useful to shield businesses from that risk while still benefiting from it.
A related question is about, if you look at any other standard currency, there is, of course, a government and there's a regulatory, and there is a certain underlying trade that happens in, say, bonds in that particular currency. There's a rate. So there is a predictability of the future rate based on number of derivative instruments in the marketplace. And do you see Bitcoin being a very open, practically peer-to-peer type of a transaction-based currency? The fundamental risk of a stabilization not happening in a given time and therefore not getting caught up because one doesn't know what can happen and there is no indication of the future through any other mechanisms known so far in the currency environment.
If I may just add a note. Increased adoption of Bitcoin is what is going to stabilize this currency. There is a lot of volatility at the moment. From the merchant's perspective, I can tell you that the B2B space is something that we need to develop here. I have Bitcoin, I accept Bitcoin. There's not much I can do with it right now. We should start talking about what businesses from the B2B space, what we can do. Can I pay my suppliers with it? Are suppliers willing to accept it? Are other businesses willing to accept it? Because the transaction volume at the merchant level, one would assume, is going to be much higher than at the individual level. And this is also something in the B2B space which is going to give a lot of stability to Bitcoin. Right now, yes, you're absolutely right. It's very volatile. It's, as David pointed out, very sensitive to world events also. But this is increased adoption is what's going to stabilize this. And if there are any Bitcoin developers or Bitcoin entrepreneurs looking at the B2B space specifically because of the transaction volume is going to really be something that I'm going to be looking at as a merchant because this is what we need help with.
We have another question. We'll take one more question before moving to the next point. Can we have the...
Hello, I'm Kyle Sinclair from the National Newspaper. As with everything with Bitcoin, I'm sure it's a gray area, but can Bitcoin be regulated by an individual government? Could the UAE, for example, set rules on the use and transaction of Bitcoin, or because of its peer-to-peer nature, is that impossible?
Yes, they can, and I think every government should at least start discussing and start the conversation with entrepreneurs and enthusiasts of Bitcoin and basically us, the geeks. Should start actually the conversation because this will benefit any country. It's most of the time it's been, especially in the Middle East, when it comes to innovation, we're a very reactive region. A lot of companies in the US would start, and a lot of innovation starts around there, and possibly and also in Europe and East Asia. But we tend to be a lot more reactive than proactive with finding new ideas. So it's more of a copying models from outside. So hopefully this will not be the case when it comes to regulation and government giving support or a green light or even a yellow light to Bitcoin, or people starting to accept it, or at least dealing with it and starting to use it in society, and then we'll see how it goes. But so far, it's not been that much. And I think a lot of governments anyway, a little bit, there needs a little bit of knowledge, some education, stuff like that, but I think everybody's also a little bit cautious to take any risk by saying anything. So.
Okay. So one of the points we are discussing that Bitcoin is decentralized. Anyone can have a say in it. But wouldn't that make it unreliable? Can you trust 1 billion people? Take Wikipedia, for example. I think this is one of the reasons why people are hesitant of using Bitcoin, because who controls it?
Yeah, sorry, go ahead if you want.
Go ahead.
Yeah. I think all of us.
Yeah, we all have something to say on this one.
The example you give of Wikipedia, let me just reply to that. There's research out there that has demonstrated that Wikipedia as a source of knowledge is in fact more accurate on average, than traditional encyclopedias, what are called centralized encyclopedias, where they get a few experts to lay out the content. And so really this highlights the power of markets. When you get a huge number of people working together, they all correct each other and get to a point where you get something really solid. And I think that's truly what's awesome about Bitcoin. You have all of these people working together and figuring out what is going to work. I'll let you guys
We've all heard of Linux, yes? The open source. Linux is a great example, and Red Hat, the company that was behind Linux, that is also open source. That is also an extremely amazing situation that is very comparable, a little bit actually, very comparable to Bitcoin. There are specific protocols for making any edits to Linux. You don't have access to the information, you have access to the code. And that I think is an important differentiation, because having Wikipedia actually might not be the best example. The best example to compare it to might be Linux.
Tarek.
Popular decentralized open source technologies have proven time and time again that they are foolproof, fail-proof, and basically they are supporting innovation and going forward and supporting the society that they are actually catering for, the community or the industry. So when it comes to Bitcoin, I think Wikipedia wouldn't be the best example, because in Wikipedia I can actually go now and then type something, and it will take somebody else to go in and notice it, to be able to say, hold on a minute, this is not really accurate, but it will take somebody who knows about the topic to actually change this information. Bitcoin, yes, it is controlled by nodes which are run by people. So I can go in now and I can hack Bitcoin. I can do that. I will go in and I will type some code and it will, change something. But then the Bitcoin network will reject it, because it is backed by multiple channels. One is mathematics. If I say 2 + 2 is 5, it won't be true, so immediate rejection. Cryptography, I will need to encrypt everything I have so that it also matches the network. There's a backup. So if you think of any book in the world that is very, very extremely popular, if I just go and change some things in the book and then just go to the market and say, by the way, this is the original copy of this book, look what it says. Easily anybody can come and say, this is not true. There are originals all over the world saying that you're wrong. And with Bitcoin, it is also the same way. With the blockchain, it is backed up on millions of computers worldwide, and whatever anybody says will have to match whatever is already backed up in the network. And that's why it is almost impossible to kind of control it in that easy kind of method. So, no.
What's the story about MtGox?
Oh,
Who wants to start?
risky.
I think not go into too much detail. So MtGox is this, it's an exchange company. It's a company that enabled people to buy and sell Bitcoins. And so they went bankrupt, they had all sorts of trouble, they had security issues, and so they lost the funds of their customers. And so what happens often is that people confuse the failure of MtGox with the failure of Bitcoin. It's like you're confusing the failure of PayPal with the failure of the underlying US dollar. Lehman Brothers. Or Lehman Brothers. With the US dollar. So MtGox as a company was poorly run and it failed. Bitcoin came out of it as strong, if not stronger.
Okay. We're here. Do you want to add anything to that?
No, actually, it's exactly what I said as well. Yeah.
Okay. So we're hearing more and more cryptocurrencies emerging into the market, like Litecoin and Quark, and they're looking very promising. If one wants to choose which cryptocurrency to work with, how can we choose? Which one would we go for?
Yeah, well, it depends on why you would want to do anything with that cryptocurrency. So if you're, because you have to understand that every cryptocurrency is there for a different use. So some of them are there for for exchanging value, just like we have with Bitcoin and Litecoin and others. Some have been created specifically for charity. Some have been created specifically for hosting services and storage. So every currency has its own use. And then if we're talking about currency as a commodity or as an investment, then every currency or every type of altcoin has its own risk factor that comes with it. So everybody would have to study it and see what is the risk that you are comfortable with, and how easy is it to trade it? What do you want to do with it? Do you want to mine it? Do you want to, for example, Bitcoin mining is extremely difficult now, and only if you put in quite a lot of money and resources and technology into it, you'll be able to mine anything. But if you're talking about starting a small mining operation, then you would probably go for something else. But if you want quick short-term return on investment, then Bitcoin is quite a good one as well. So it really depends on what you're using it for. And there are a lot of resources out there to figure out what that is. But I would urge anybody who wants to do anything with that to really look into it and study it as much as possible, because at the end of the day, although it sounds really cool and it's online and everything, it's not a computer game. It's real money that you're dealing with. So if you put in some money into cryptocurrency and you lose it, you are losing real money, and nobody's going to be able to save you. It's a real investment.
Do you want to add anything? Amber, would you accept other cryptocurrencies?
I don't think it's a question of currency so much as it is for us about convertibility. So we can accept another currency today, tomorrow. For me, it's more about what to do with this. Right now, we're hoarding Bitcoin, we're keeping it. The purpose of it is to do something with it, to lend more credibility to the system. So for us, again, the question is what to do with the Bitcoin that we have, because we do have it, we accept it, I have it. Now what do I do with it? So for us, it's whether it's the doggy coin, Litecoin, Bitcoin, it's what to do with this once we have it. So again, if you're a Bitcoin developer or a Bitcoin entrepreneur, this space for the merchant and between merchants, what to do with that is, I think, is something that needs to be examined.
If I want to invest in is there a question? No? If I want to invest in Bitcoin and I want to do it in the least possible risk, what advice would you give me? I want to be part of this experiment, but with the least minimum risk.
I think that's the golden question. Yeah, you would have to, the least risk you would take is, like I said, by studying it and understanding it as much as possible. Because if you go into any kind of commodity or stock or any kind of investment, you really need to know what you're doing. So if you want to just accept Bitcoin as a business, that's great, and you can also shield yourself from the fluctuation. All that's great. But if you want to invest, then that's a whole different story. Investment has its own realm of understanding that everybody would need to know before they get into it. It's just what makes sense, really.
Yes.
On the volatility of payments, specifically for the pizza guys. So I know the question was already asked, but how do you specifically deal with it? Do you reprint menus every other week, or I mean, how do you?
No, I don't need to. I have an app that I've downloaded for my Android. All the transactions take place. It's a phone-to-phone transaction, and my wallet, my Bitcoin wallet, converts the currency for me on a daily basis. The menu does not get reprinted. The menu stays the same. The amount is posted in dirham. And depending on the rate of that day, I will punch in the amounts in dirham. So for example, my margarita pizza is for 44 dirham. So I'll punch in 44. It'll convert the amount into Bitcoin for me, which of course, we're working with tiny amounts of Bitcoin. Then I shoot up, I give you a QR code. Your scanner on your phone will scan it. And your wallet, which you need to have also, where you hold your Bitcoin, will then transfer the amount into mine, and the transaction is...
Show that on camera, by the way, if you want. We have them with us.
No? Okay, great.
If the camera can catch it, I don't know.
I will show you in a minute. In a minute. The transaction itself, the transaction time is very, very fast. I think the longest that it's taken at the Pizza Guys is about 1 minute. It's super fast. I get it immediately. I have a little sound of coins dropping, so I know I have it. I have an entire history in my phone with all the Bitcoin transactions. In terms of, your question was about the volatility? Yes, so I mean, I'm not selling luxury goods. I'm not selling Mercedes-Benz, I'm selling pizza. So the amounts are small. We are assuming the risk at the moment, and that's because we've decided that was a decision, that was what we were going to do. We were going to assume the risk it's a small risk at this time. If we do get into a situation sometime in the future where we have 50% of our transactions coming in Bitcoin, then we might look at limiting it, putting a cap on it. I don't foresee that happening in the next 2 years.
Wow.
Yes, you do.
Yeah, currently, yes, but the Bitcoin protocol is coming with an improvement where you won't need to, only the merchant will need to be connected to the internet.
You can also pay with paper wallets as well.
Yes. It's just like any other, you know, if you go buy dollars for dirhams, it's the same thing.
It's very similar to any commodity like gold or any precious metal. It's by supply and demand. If you have anything that somebody's willing to pay money for it, then the price is going to go up. That's basically how it works.
Yeah.
No, there is no sense. It's by the market itself. The market controls it. So the Bitcoin market,
we're all part of the market. People that engage in Bitcoin are part of the market. I can be a buyer and seller, they're buyers and sellers, and so we exchange. And so the price is the average of everyone's buying and selling if you want.
No, there's no countries with Bitcoin. It's all one. It's all one network.
It's a global internet-based currency, if you want. So anyone that has access to the internet can be part of it.
Yeah.
Okay. We have a question.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Can you guys talk to us about mining a little bit? What's the best and most cost-effective way to mine for Bitcoins in the current climate?
So I'm just going to say a very small comment on that. I generally don't like to talk about mining because it is sort of the backbone of the technology. It's technical stuff that really 99% of the people don't need to understand, including myself. I don't completely understand the complexities of mining, and I don't think it's necessary. It's like asking, you know, how does TCP/IP work behind the internet to transfer the information? But if anyone wants to answer the question, I'll let you guys.
Not sure how many people understand how mining works. It's quite a complex procedure, but in essence, it's a small reward for the processing of transactions that you're doing to help the network stay alive. So now, what would be the best way to mine? It would depend on the cryptocurrency that you're mining as well. So some cryptocurrencies you can mine, some you cannot. Some are so difficult that you cannot, rather than you are unable to in general. So it would really depend. So majority of people are mining using graphics cards. So they will build up a mining rig, and then you put in the software, and it stays online, and it mines like that. But it really depends on which cryptocurrency you're mining to be able to understand. Sorry? With Bitcoin, it's a huge operation you will need to run. So you will have to have, they're called ASIC miners, application-specific integrated circuits. So,
The thing with ASIC miners is if you buy your own ASIC miners, it will be impossible for you to actually crack the algorithm and get paid. You have to go into pools, etc. So do you have any kind of background of how
we can get into that after the session.
It's quite technical, actually.
Because we're running out of time, and I still have one very important question, is that how we can make Bitcoin grow in the region, knowing that the central banks in some countries like Lebanon and Jordan are issuing warnings against its use, and people are still not like the guy over here. It was obvious he didn't like the idea. So how can we make it grow in the region?
Education.
Education?
Do you want to start, or?
Yeah, well, so education is definitely one of it. I mean, and that's what we're trying to do, also creating content for the region in Arabic and in French, which are languages that are used in the region on top of English. But it's also about, I think, having conversation with government bodies as well, because what they say, you end up having the citizens look up to governments, and if a government bans it or warns against it, you get this sense of fear. And so you know, I'm hoping that we get a more open conversation with governments about the potential of the innovation. It's not about replacing the currency system in a country with Bitcoin, but it's about enabling innovation in this space and promoting entrepreneurship and startups in this space.
I think also there needs to be a shift in thinking that this is a threat to, you know, the existing financial system or the existing currency. This is not a threat. It is another form of currency, and of course with education and also with you know, moving away from the controversy of Bitcoin, we need to move away from that, because, you know, the internet is still, I mean, if you want to talk about controversies on the internet, it is the marketplace for video piracy, music piracy, child pornography. We need to move away from these things to the very real benefits that Bitcoin can have, and talk more about these things. And of course, having it in Arabic, having it in multiple languages, especially for the region, I think is key. Also, remittances. No one's talking about remittances. This is a huge, huge area where Bitcoin can really, really make a big difference. And the UAE is a big remittance hub. You know, you have a lot of people sending money back to their home countries, and Bitcoin can really make a big difference in this area.
Okay. Do we have a time? The last question before we wrap up. Last question. Okay.
Thank you very much for all your insights. You mentioned that there's a cap today about 21 million Bitcoins. Yesterday, somebody said that some of the larger IT companies, I can't remember if it was IBM or HP, were working on a series of computational architecture that we're going to be able to allow a far greater number of Bitcoin. Is that going to create even greater inflation? Are we going to go into an inflation area for Bitcoin if that happens?
Creating more Bitcoin than 21 million, which will be the cap in, not right now, the cap would be in 2,140. So we're quite a long way away from that. There is a possibility of creating or extending this cap, but because how Bitcoin has been created, you can create an infinite number of zeros after the dot. So for example, I can send you a billionth of a Bitcoin, you know, and just keep adding fractions to it. This is what would actually fix the need for creating more. But at the moment, it would actually be impossible to change the software or change the protocol to accept more than 21 million. At the moment, we're about between 12 and 13, but we're far away from the 21 million, and it's very far away, actually. So.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you, David,
Thank you.
Amber. Thank you.